Hello, friends and brothers. This is Dennis with Masonic Improvement, and this is our inner circle. I'm glad that you all made it this evening. I apologize for the technical delays that we had. You know, even though I know Josh will lie to you all and say that I wasn't prepared on time, I was actually here. The computer was not prepared, and that is not my fault.
He was having technical difficulties. I'll give him that.
When is Father's Day? Did I miss it? Oh, that was
It was
last
last
week.
week, Dennis.
Damn, I missed it.
Yes.
Oh, that was the excuse I used last week, wasn't it? Brethren, I am glad that you're all here. And hey, Jeff, we're hearing a lot of you right now. There you go. All right, thank you. Um, Brethren, I am glad that you're here. I missed you last week. And, this really is part of my, kickstart of the week ritual that I need. And I sure am glad you're here. I missed you. Just wanted to throw that out there because I know that I just don't say it enough. Um, Tonight, can any of y'all guess what the thought might be based off of that quote from Steve Harvey that I put out there?
I thought we were going to talk
Not
about the rest of the story.
not no, no. I know or that's Paul Harvey, not Steve Harvey. I'm sorry. Wrong person for sure. Um I need to go back to it because I can't remember exactly what it said. Um, but ultimately, okay, you politicians figure that you have to buy votes with handouts and promise everybody everything. It would surprise you to know that many loyal Americans do not expect to be spoon fed by anybody. So, why is this pertinent today? Can any of y'all take a guess? It has nothing to do with American politics. I'm going to say that right now. We don't need to get all of those conspiracy nuts on the chat, giving us grief, which I don't even know if I'm signed into the chat on this thing. For some reason,
You mean
my
you
stuff's
mean
not
Dennis, you
working.
don't want to drive the engagement up with the YouTube algorithm, so that way they'll pay you more money because we incited conspiracies among the Masons and the non-Masons.
We have enough conspiracies without another one. We've got plenty that we can go down those rabbit holes that are pretty. I can say they're pretty plausible. As a matter of fact, on many of them, not all of them, but not most of them, but many of them are very plausible. Um, the reason I chose that today is because it's election season. It's installation season. We have a bunch of new officers right now. And you know, the the founding of Freemasonry, the beginning of Freemasonry before it was in a Grand Lodge um, arena, before it had that platform, founding of Freemasonry was basically the idea that men had the freedom as human beings to think freely on their own without any prejudice to uh, to push an agenda or will upon them. And so these men who were under persecution at the time, or could have been under persecution if they had let their beliefs be widely known, could have literally lost their head over those things. And I think that it's important for us to consider those things right now when we think about uh, the installation season, because we live in a world to where marketing is king. especially social marketing. And people will attempt to change the narrative whatever they want to change it to suit their purpose. And sometimes those narratives take off. Now, you want to talk about conspiracy nuts. Why don't we have the conspiracy nuts attacking all these people that are making stuff up all the time? I mean, you've got some real conspiracy nuts out there that support the narratives that are made up in many instances. And I just don't get it. But why my question to you is, why would that thought be important in our lodge system as elected officers? I know it's a big one. I should have prepared y'all.
I'll come off mute, Dennis, and I'll try and go off the cuff here. But specifically in a lodge setting with the election of lodge officers and the promise of, well, I promise we're going to do this and we're going to do that. I think there's two things. Is number one, it's easy to promise and under deliver. And currently in masonry, right, we've talked a lot about in the past the current affairs of masonry is we're losing members. And if you're, if you're going to come in like, oh, we're going to revolutionize this and we're going to do this and it's going to be great, that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, in masonry, it's the consent of the lodge. It's them coming together for that.
You're absolutely
So I think
right.
that's important.
That is
Think about. Sorry, I've got still in my throat.
that is the most important thing, is that it's always the consent of the lodge. That's part of what creates the peace and harmony within our brotherhood, is the fact that we should at our very root be the very basic and fundamental um, platform of democracy. Our way of voting and doing things is so simplistic at its core that it just should provides this purity that is unmatched in today's politics in the secular world. And so I think that we need to preserve that. We need to protect that. Hello, Sadie. Sometimes glad you made it tonight. Um, but yeah, I think that's very important to consider right now, because many masters go into the East thinking that, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, and many deliver on most things. However, it's really not if it's not kind of organic in how it comes about with the lodge, then it's really not. Even if you're successful at it, it can be bad for the lodge, because the lodge gets mixed feelings about it, and it can create turmoil. Even though, yes, we do need to be leaders, and we do need to try to inspire and encourage new things within our lodges and within our Masonic experience. Um, we don't need to spoon feed or force feed anything onto anybody. Jacob, you got something to say? I noticed you unmuted yourself.
I do, and I've got a slightly different take on it. Just to re-paraphrase the quote says, you figure that you have to promise everybody everything, and it would surprise you to know that many do not expect to be spoon-fed by anybody. And I, I'm not I'm not sure if I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think in today's Freemasonry, there are many that don't expect to be spoon fed, but I think we've got too many that may be sitting back and want to be fed masonry.
You caught it.
And when we promise everybody everything, I think we've got to really look back at some of the stuff we talked about over the last couple of months as we got together on these, and prepared for the election season and talked about setting our calendars and really having a deep dive focus into what is the culture of your lodge and what is your lodge going to do that is going to set it apart from other lodges in the region or other lodges in your district or state. And if you can do everything, you're not going to do anything well. Or if you attempt to do everything, you're not going to do any one thing really well. And I think that the main goal, and very similar to what the quote is kind of pushing to, in at least in my opinion, is that figure out what your culture is, dedicate more resources to that, and do it well. And then the individuals in the lodge, some may expect to be spoon-fed Freemasonry, some may just go along and float and be there and not really participate. But each type of event is going to have somebody that's ready to get involved, ready to put their work clothes on, don the apron, and get to work. I and I think we got to find those people, those brothers, for each of the types of events that we do, and allow them a little bit of latitude to take pride and ownership in some of the stuff that we're putting on at the lodge level.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I, 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 it's not exactly what I was thinking. The very first statement that you made hit the nail on the head on what I was thinking when I posted it. And, and that is that many people like to be spoon fed nowadays. It seems like we've become a spectator's world. With social media, we are spectators of our own world. We're not actively, working to do things. Now, here's another thought.
And I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think the goal of me in particular in my area and this group, don't want to speak for anybody else in the group, but the goal should be to set an example of a good group of brothers that don't expect to be spoon fed, that want to be intentional, want to be forthright, want to do it, want to put on the apron and get to work.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And that's extremely important. There's a certain amount of duty that is taught to us that we need to pick up the torch and run with it. I mean, from the very beginning, there's certain expectations that are set that we're supposed to uphold that, you know, I've heard people teaching the work to people. In fact, when I was learning to work, one of the people that was teaching me at the time uh, said, it tells you this, but then here's your loophole. It tells you this, but here's your loophole. And I'm thinking, I don't hear the loopholes. I'm not interested in those loopholes. I'm saying I'm listening to what it's telling me, my duties and upon my honor. Now, there's always a loophole, and it's kind of dishonorable to take that loophole. But upon my honor, these are the things that I'm going to do. I I I really think that we do need to be intentional with what we do. I think all of you know this, that how I believe that we do need to be intentional, and we don't need to be spectators in our own lives. We need to be actively pursuing the betterment of ourselves and our circumstances within our world. Here's another thought. So um, Harvey was not just an announcer, but he was also a public speaker, and then had the what he's the career, or the thing that he's Paul Harvey is most well known for is for that segment called and now for the rest of the story. if you think about his career and where he really built his legacy on that particular segment, very small segment of everybody's day, he would entice you with just a little bit of information and then let your imagination go wild, and then he would come back and fill in the gaps later and help you to understand what. But he had you actively thinking about the story that he was, portraying, or the lessons that he was trying to unfold to you. He had, because he would stop, it would cause you to purposely um, get active in anticipation and participation in the segment, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite things. I used to listen to talk radio every day on the way home from work, and that was one of the main reasons I listened, was because of Paul Harvey, because I used to love listening to the stories. But I think that we don't need to be spoon fed every bit of it. We need to allow ourselves to take the reins and be creative with some of it. I mean, there's certain fundamental truths in Freemasonry that we shouldn't mess with. But there's others. There's a lot of things that we should be contemplating and thinking about actively all the time as we go through our daily lives. See you unmuted again,
I was
Danny.
gonna take a little bit of a pivot, Dennis, and
You go right
say I
ahead.
think there's a lot of men who are younger in masonry who are looking to not be spoon fed. And we are so used to spoon feeding people as they come into masonry. They want, and this is a topic we've talked about here on in Masonic Improvement before, is they want the deeper knowledge. They want the hidden secrets, whatever that looks like for them, right? Deeper conversations, more esoteric conversations, reading books like Esoterica or Morals and Dogma, and having conversations around those things too. If all you're doing is talking about the next business meeting, is that not just spoon feeding someone? Is that not just, hey, we're going to give you just a little bit that you need, and we don't get into a point where we actually get to the deeper things that actually have meaning?
That's a valid
So
point.
that's one of my thoughts too.
That's a very valid point.
I think you could take it that way too, right?
Yes, yes, and when you'll see that a lot in lodges that don't have any kind of education in their program in their lodges. They're spoon feeding them a specific type of, or a specific part of masonry. I'm not even going to say Freemasonry, because I believe that Freemasonry is there's certain fundamental things that create this thing called Freemasonry. And I think that when we deter away from those things, then we get to masonry, just a normal everyday guy masonry, which, to each his own. Everybody gets what they get out of the craft. But I think that when lodges don't have education, they're spoon feeding a certain type of masonry, and it doesn't allow for the expansion of one's mind. Or I guess anyone can take the reins on their own and expand on their own understanding and beliefs. But man, that's a tough road to do on your own when you're in a in a organization that was created for the master apprentice experience.
And I was going to say, Dennis, I think part of that is this challenging of ideas in a moment where you talk to someone. Like, are your ideas getting challenged, or are you simply just studying and going, well, I know the best, right? So that's where that master apprentice, even master to master, right? Like maybe I feel like I'm on the same level with you, but are you challenging ideas in a certain, in a, even questioning? We think about the Socratic method and how people learn by asking questions and just asking why after that. That's not even happening if you don't have that, right? Um,
Yes.
So it's an interest, and especially when we think about the founding of Freemasonry, we go back to why did this happen? What type of men were? It was the intellectuals. It was the thinking people. That's why they were there. They wanted to think and have a sharing of ideas. You know, that's what it was in that day. You know, but it's like, how do I go to deal with everyone who can have those ideas?
I agree. And
And I think too, your point, Dennis, about it being hard to do without the right people in the right places, without that mentorship relationship, the master apprentice relationship. Um, if I hadn't have found this group of people, the mentorship and understanding in the ways of studying would have been non-existent in my masonry. It's groups like this and doing our book club is where I can get that, and travel into other areas is where I can get that. And not to say that what I've got in my region is not Freemasonry, but it doesn't have the esoteric components that I'm looking for. When somebody where I'm at says esoteric, they're talking about a certificate hanging on the wall that comes from rote memorization and understanding what our ritual is. Um, so I think too, just to double down on exactly what Daniel was saying, it's it's about the relationship there, and it's about the questioning and the learning, and getting that. And if people aren't getting it, you can't just read a book. You got to read a book and then find somebody to talk to about it, because it's a growth mechanism. It's an understanding mechanism more than just a knowledge. It has to come from a place of wisdom, not just knowledge.
yeah,
And Dennis, before you respond to Jacob, I'm just going to plug really quick. Brothers, friends, and brothers who are on the live on YouTube, this is exactly why you need to join the inner circle right here, right now. You just heard it from Brother Atcher. You heard it from me. You've heard it from Dennis. This is where you get to actually come have that conversation and not just think about it on your own. This is the shameless plug. It's not even shameless. I'm full of shame with this plug, and it's the shameful plug for the inner circle.
I appreciate that, and it's well deserved and perfectly timed, because I was also going to mention that next week we will not be live. Next week we're going to have our private inner circle meeting discussing chapter 5 in Esoterica, and because we skipped it last month because of different events that were going on, it kind of put a hindrance on what could be done on my side of things. But next week we are going to dive into chapter 5 in Esoterica, and have a great time. So now is the time to join the inner circle if you're interested in those deeper conversations. I would like to say, what's interesting about the statement of your area, thinking esoteric is the memorization, which that's a form of esoteric knowledge, but it's not the form of esoteric knowledge that they were thinking of way back in the day, right? But
That's just the foundation.
but in a
It's got to
way,
start there.
but in a way, that's also the spoon-fed easy stuff that allows people to just become spectators. If we master this memorization, and that's all we have to do, then we can just sit and watch everybody else, with in Freemasonry, and feel justified in what we're doing. And that may
And
sound
I
a
can
little
correct people from the
judgmental.
sideline.
That may seem a little judgmental, but maybe it is. And it shouldn't be. I should know a little more than I do, but um, I think that that's just one of the different ways that we can get complacent. If we know just enough, then we can just sit back and watch the rest. What did you say, Daniel? I'm sorry, I was too busy listening to myself talk. I apologize.
And I said, then you can also correct people from the sidelines with authority.
Yes, in the middle of a degree, or in the middle of opening or closing lodge. That's when it's best to do it, and really loud and proud. Or just sit on the sidelines and mouth it really loud in a high whisper from the back of the room, so everybody hears that you know what those words are.
Yep.
That's funny.
Well, there's a brief little excerpt from our monitor that our Right Worshipful Cockcroft down here in the southeast part of the state brings up in some of his forums and when he goes and talks at OLT, and it is knowledge is attained by degrees, wisdom dwells with contemplation. And there's some more to it, but that's the first part, and it kind of drives home really the point there, right? We pick up that knowledge by understanding and laying the foundation, but you're not going to get the real fruit of the labor until you work at it, think about it, discuss it, mull it over, challenge yourself, and contemplate to gain that wisdom.
I agree. What's interesting is I talked to both Codys today myself. The one of the things that, and it really spurred the contemplation of all this tonight. What it really spurred it is that the last week I've been struggling with Article 276 and 276A on the qualifications of a master, and the additional qualifications, and the interpretation of that law in the Forms 101 and 101A, how they are written. It's just really perplexing to me that it appears misinterpreted. It really needs to be rewritten altogether to be in more plain English if they really want people to follow it. But it seems like a mystery to me. And then the 101 and 101A, it just really ticks me off that you have all these different things that you look at and you think, man, if this guy can do this, then he knows how to be an officer. He's pretty proficient in his understanding of what it is to be a lodge leader. And then at the end, you see this little bottom line that says, number 3, I am exempt because I'm a past master. It's like, what the are you kidding me? Because you were a past master 50 years ago, you think that you know everything there is to be a leader in your lodge. It's even 5 years ago. Today, you're not sitting in the same lodge. If you're sitting in the same lodge today that you were 5 years ago, then you might have bigger things to worry about than that Form 101 and 101A. But the reality is that if in that 5-year period, you should have had many people coming through the door, and you should have had many people, different, just an organic movement within the lodge to where it's not exactly the same thing. And you've got different administrative tactics and programs and things like that are in place today that were not there 5 years ago. So how can you really be proficient by just being a past master? Go ahead, Jeff. What you got? I know you're going to make me look bad right now, but that's your job.
No, I'm not going to make you look bad. But what if the guy, brother, that ascends to the east, what if the only example he's ever gotten has been make sure there's a meal. It doesn't have to be hot, it doesn't have to be good, just that there's a meal. And then the lodge is open, and read the Grand Secretary's message and the minutes, and then go home. In other words, that, I don't mean to trivialize any of our efforts, but hopefully everybody's heard the story about the monkeys in the ladder. There was a banana on the top of the ladder, and so they trained a monkey to climb the ladder and eat the banana. And then they started spraying that monkey with water, and then they introduced a second monkey, and the second monkey wouldn't climb the ladder because the first one wouldn't let him, but he didn't know why. And then before you know it, there's a room full of monkeys that has no idea that there's a banana on top of the ladder. They just know they can't climb the ladder. But that's the status, right? That's what we do. And so, hopefully nobody that ever listens to this takes any offense to it. But what if that's the bar that's set, and as long as we achieve that bar, then that's good enough.
Right. And that's what's scary to me. That's what's scary to me is that I think if
Oh, I don't think it should be I don't think it should be scary. I think we should look around and realize that in a lot of cases that's the reality that we're living. Sorry.
well, I know that is, but should we accept that as that's the reality? That's my question. Should we just accept that?
No, we shouldn't. No, no, we shouldn't. But in some cases, it's the best that some can do, and they don't know how to break out because they also don't want to end up ostracized in their own circles.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yep. And that is easy to do, especially when, membership is dwindling and things like that. Um, that's definitely easy to do. I see that.
So let me
Just real quick, and yes, I want to hear this. I just wanted to say, welcome, Sadie. Sadie sometimes is now an Inner Circle member, and I'd like to welcome you and send me a message on after the show, or even right now. I'll get to it after the show, and I will invite you over to the Inner Circle Facebook page so that you can get the links to jump on here with us, if you choose to. Go ahead, Jeff.
um so I'll and not picking on Daniel or maybe even Jacob, but probably more so Daniel out of the five of us that are on the call. Daniel, how many lodges are within 30 minutes of where you live?
I'm in Dallas County, so I
Lots.
shoot a lot, a lot in 30 minutes. If you expand that to an hour, that would like 3x that number.
Right.
So
So
like,
that's why. So
yeah,
just thinking like that. Thank you, Worship
I
Master.
no, I'm just trying to run down really quick. Like within 15 minutes of my house, 15 to 20 minutes, there's at least six. So I'll narrow that down to like 15 to 20 minutes is six, easy.
Right.
And that doesn't include the ones that are in the Scottish Rite Cathedral downtown, which is probably another six.
Right. Mine and my the reason I bring that up is that when you live in a metropolitan area, it's easy to rummage through, and no offense again, it's easy to rummage through Masonic lodges like the junk drawer in your kitchen to find the apparatus that you need to practice the masonry that you want. Those of us who find ourselves in rural lodges, yes, there are other lodges within 30-45 minutes of where I live, but they're very much of the same flavor in most every case. And
Or
no
they have the
offense,
same members.
I'm a member of more of them than I should be, Josh. Um, but we just, you just have to, you know, I agree with everything that we're saying, and I think that we're seeing a bit of an awakening, that people are wanting more. I had a very good conversation with the Right Worshipful Green in Shiner a couple of weeks ago, and he's very much of this theme. Like, okay, there's going to be and none of us are going to disagree with this next statement. There's going to be guys that are going to show up if the lights are on, right? No matter what. If they know that there's something going on, they're going to be there. It's the guys that don't show up that we've got to figure out how to get them coming back. And it's exactly this that we're talking about that's going to do that, right? Something other than,
Yeah, that's
as I said in our chat, hot coffee and cold fried chicken.
yes. The the reality is, and that's and the reality is that that's the most difficult data to retrieve. So it's the most difficult problem to solve because once someone's gone, you don't know why they left in most cases. Most people don't leave kicking and screaming. Most people will just stop showing up. And that's with any organization. And you don't know why. You don't know if it was a personality issue. You don't know if it was a lack of, education, a lack of, warm fried chicken. You don't know what it was. But most people will just walk away and never say a thing. Or they've said something, but it's fallen on deaf ears because it was people that didn't share the same opinion. That's the tough thing that we deal with. So all of that being said, and the theme of not being spoon fed, what are some ideas out there to encourage brothers? What are some ideas that y'all may have that would encourage brothers to think outside of the box, or maybe let's try and spoon feed some things, right? What are some things outside of the box that you haven't seen in your lodges, or that you have seen that was recently initiated and started that looked like it was going to be very promising and successful if it's held on to long term? What are some thoughts that you might have for people out there to support them in trying to initiate some organic change?
So I'm gonna probably screw this story up, but I would encourage you to Google it. So years ago, Dr. Pepper bought Schweppes, the the soda company,
Yep,
right?
I remember that.
And the story that I've been told is that the Dr. Pepper CEO stood on the steps of the Dow Jones or the bank or something, and he told the press that they would grow Schweppes by, I don't know, 150% over the next 3 years. And then he and then he said thanks and have a good day. And of course, everybody that worked for him was like, what in the world are you doing? And sure enough, he turned, his comment was, well, I've said it, so now we have to do it. So in that sense, one of the things I've challenged us to here at home is we're going to tell everybody that we're having some sort of education at every meeting the rest of this year, and and maybe even assign topics. And well, we're going to have to figure it out because we've put it out there. So I don't know, so that's one thing that we're think that that I'm somewhat a fan of, is set the bar beyond what anybody can expect, and then work your tail off to achieve it. And I think this would be a great example of that.
I agree. I agree. If you don't, I am a firm believer, and I don't care what anyone says. I am a firm believer in uh, manifesting destiny. So I truly believe that we manifest our own destiny based off of our beliefs and our own uh, blocks within our mind. So our only obstacles, the quickest way to from a problem to a solution is the 6 inches right here. In my case, it's probably 4 inches, 4.5 inches. I don't have as much as some people, but it's there. It's probably why it's easier for me to find solutions, right? We'll just say that. But but I truly believe in manifesting destiny. So if you want to be a successful uh, educational lodge, you got to start. Just got to start. You have to put it out there, and you have to tell everybody that's what you are. You know, when when I was master of Goliad, and we'll go back a little bit before that. Before I was master of Goliad, and we had a couple of good years right before, but before that, it wasn't all that exciting. It wasn't all that pretty bland. But I had gotten online and I had started really putting it out there that we were doing great things in Goliad. People started believing it. And lo and behold, Goliad delivered. Man, Goliad was doing anything and everything that anybody would have expected from a lodge. And we were hitting on dang near all 8 cylinders. We never did really tap into the education market, though we do dabble in it. But it Goliad has been a pinnacle of Freemasonry in South Texas. Now, is it still there? I don't know. That's not for me to say. But I do know that you're absolutely right, Jeff. Once you start putting it out there and the guys start believing that, hey, we're in this, we're doing it, then it actually starts manifesting itself into something quite nice.
Well, but then the other thing too is that I think it encourages folks to spread their wings a little bit. In other words, to to maybe speak up when they wouldn't normally, or to throw something out there that maybe they wouldn't normally, right? So, um, challenge what they don't even realize. Um, Challenge what they don't even realize they're challenging just because they're comfortable to speak up, right?
I agree. I see it says then batters joined. Was that the downfall or was that the uptick? I don't know. Is that who user DE2GX is? Mr. Incognito? And I do agree, Goliad is still a great lodge. I would never think anything different. It's my that's my that's my home lodge. My mother lodge is St. John's 51, and my home lodge is Goliad. And I'm past master there and will always be extremely proud of Goliad. Mike O, how are you, sir? Glad you're able to make it tonight.
Hi guys.
Oh, look at this guy in chat. You decide. Okay. I see you. I'm watching you. We'll see who you play out to be. I know it's not the old batters because he barely got onto Facebook. I don't think he's going to be chatting in YouTube anytime soon. Um, any other ideas on those things? Jeff has spoke up. Come on, guys. I know y'all got ideas. Daniel, I know you're fresh. You've got more ideas than any of us combined because you've been working on your Vanguard over the past, year, getting ready for your year. You are now installed, so you're just vibrating with ideas.
You know, one of the things that my lodge has done the past few years that has worked really well in many ways, and in one way it could be improved, is we started doing a lunch, a weekly lunch, Wednesday afternoons. Hey, here's where we're going. Beginning of the month, here's all 4 weeks. Here's the restaurants we're going to. Most of them are within a 15-20 minute drive of the lodge. So, if you can get there, you can get there. It became a text group, just kind of, hey, are you coming? Are you not? Unfortunately, the brother who started that also passed away about a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Oh no.
Um, Hopefully, we're hopeful it's going to keep going. We want to see it keep going. The one improvement that I would say on it is it tended to be limited to that text group because it just that was the convenience, right? And hey, these are the guys who've opted into it. I think the thing as we look at how are we going to keep it going is also to put that out a little more of here it is on an email or here it is on the Facebook group to reach other folks additionally in it because I'm not saying it was a click, but it was just it was more of people who opted into it. And so I think there was a it was it has been a great opportunity to bring brothers in, to bring fellow brothers in, and then also to people go like, wow, this is a lot of guys. Like, sometimes we get 15, 20 guys to come to lunch, depending on the restaurant, depending on the day of the week. And it's like, wow, this is a lot of guys. How do y'all know each other? What's this going on? Right. And it became a very informal, oh, we're Mesquite Lodge. We're right over here down the road. If you feel free to come check us out some Thursday night. This is when we meet. Great opportunities there, right? But again, like, are we communicating it enough out to actually make sure everybody knows about it? But we also had a lot of guys come from, because we are in the Dallas Fort Worth area, right? Hey, we've got this guy who's coming over here, this guy who's coming from over here. Other lodges started joining us in that lunch group, which is fabulous. Again,
Nice.
great tool, great opportunity. And it does get to a point where you've got regularly 15, 20 guys showing up. Now we're having to get, reservations at places to go. Great problem to have, right?
Yes.
But that's something I have seen firsthand work really well. Because of that, some guys started cross pollinating to different lodges. Um, but it just built that sense of community outside of the environment of the lodge building, outside of that environment where it's like, hey, we're just Masons, we're meeting. It also provided a great opportunity for people who wanted to know more about Masonry or who were investigating our lodge to potentially petition the lodge to come to that lunch as well. Again, for our lodge, Wednesday lunchtime worked out great for the population of the lodge that I'm in. Um, I would love to see that expand to like, hey, let's do a game night once a quarter or something like that. There's some things that are in the works around that, maybe more family oriented. Um, or maybe just even, like stripping back some of the things that worked well, but maybe were overextended in the past, right? This past year, we were trying to do a little too much in certain areas. We tried to do 2 blood drives and 2 fish fries. That was honestly too much. We needed to pull. We decided, hey, that needs to actually be pulled back to 1 time a year because we can get that, and that attendance is well attended and well supported. But when we pushed for that second time, noticed the volunteers are tired, the target audience is tired. It seems like it happened too quick, too frequent. And so again, it's about resource allocation as well. Like, is this something that's an easy lift to do, or is it something that's going to be bigger and we need more people for it? I hope that answered your question, Dennis.
I think it's awesome, and it falls right into what some of the most successful groups do, and that's why the Rotary is so successful. Well, I'm not going to say that's what the only reason. The Rotary supports itself and its members, and so that's why they're so successful. But that's one of the things that they do, and I only bring that up because I don't want this show to always only be just about Freemasonry, right? Or when we talk about the administrative or the different things that we do, this can translate into other organizations as well. And that's one of the things that happens with the Rotary is that every month there's in some areas it's every week, there's a lunch of all the business owners in the area, and you'll have one speaker, and the business owners, the local business owners, anytime they meet with another local business owner, they'll invite them to the lunch and say, hey, this one's on us. Why don't you just come see what we're all about? And that's one of the ways that they cater to potential members. But I'll also say that the some of the most successful lodges in Texas do that very thing, and they do that with the intentional purpose of vetting people outside of the lodge building and outside of the lodge experience. They will. There's some lodges, Hillcrest being one of them. The lodge meets once a month at a different location around town at night, and they have they have dinner and drinks, and not necessarily a heavy dinner or whatever, but they have a social time at a restaurant, and that's where all the brothers get an opportunity to get together, hang out, and have a few drinks, and kick up the dust, and visit and do whatever. And then also, if anyone has contacted them via email or Facebook Messenger or Instagram or whatever, because they are attached to all of it, but that's the only way you can get a hold of them, unless you know a brother, is through uh, digital media of some sort. You get a hold of them through there, they'll vet you through that process, and then they'll let you know where to have drinks with the group. And that's how they vet people before anybody ever gets to see the lodge or anything else if they're interested in Freemasonry. That lodge is one of the most successful members or lodges at making Masons and retaining Master Masons. One of the most successful, hand down, every year, year after year in Texas. And I think that having that outside option for brothers to get together, you might see brothers that could never make it to your lodge meeting on a night be able to show up at this social event because it's on a different night or it's a different time or what have you, whatever the aspect. And like Daniel said, Wednesday lunches are perfect. And I think that's excellent. That's I think it just basically proves the point that it doesn't, the stated meeting time is not always the best time for every member of your lodge. So it's something to think about. And I also like something else you said, Daniel, is that now it seemed like it could have been like a clique to some degree. And that's something that I really didn't like about Goliad for a while, is that it seemed like anything that was going to happen was decided by like 5 or 6 people, and it was whoever showed up at Wednesday during floor school. Anybody else didn't matter because they weren't part of that crowd. Well, then we decided to opt into the phone tree system and all that kind of good stuff, and we have a dial out that we put a message in and it goes to all the lodge members that are opted in. And now we have a district communications officer that is amazing, that puts out everything that the lodge does, and every lodge in our district, as a matter of fact, every week, so that we have that, so that it doesn't feel so much like a clique. So I applaud you for looking at that part of it and saying, now that this has happened, maybe we need to think about scalability so that we're reaching everyone or reaching more people than just the people that we have so far. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's just it's we're at a moment of transition that happened, so it's easy to implement that, right? Like, oh, well, how do we do this? Whether that be the new Masonic year, and that's something too, Dennis. I'm just gonna bring this up for those who might be in the line in their lodge. Um, are you a junior deacon and you have ideas? Take them to your master, take them to the leadership team of your lodge and like, let's get those implemented. It's not about your year as master, it's about progressing the lodge in small increments. That's going to help it so much more. If you're a junior warden, it's not about saving those ideas for 2 years down the line to say, oh no, this is what I did when it was my year. My it's how do we get that done today? And that's going to shape and show the lodge the leadership that you have too.
Daniel, I agree 100%, but I also think it's important that when you go into the South, that you don't skid along until 15 minutes after you're installed as master to figure out what it is you want to focus on.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It should be, here's the idea, let's run with it, but also like, here's my plan to move forward. Right. It's not, oh, by now I'm halfway through my master's year and I finally figured out what I'm doing. By the way, 3/4 of it can't be done.
anymore.
Yeah, that's a tough time to find out that 3/4 can't be done is right after you're installed. But I agree with every bit of it, and I think that that's part of succession planning, and also part of the flexibility that is required to be a good leader, because there are things that people will lose interest in, like you said, the fish fry and the blood drive. But let's say this new idea from the senior deacon ended up being something that everybody really was drawn to, that could have taken the place of that fish fry and blood drive, and and it really takes off. And you just thought everybody was worn out. They were just worn out of doing the same thing. So being flexible in
Yeah.
being able to implement things and not being too rigid is a great aspect of being a leader. You want to stay focused on your plan, right? But you also have to be flexible, because we have to be able to read a room. That's one of the most important lessons that I've learned over the years, is being able to read a room. I have really set myself back in life, um, on a few occasions, with plans that I had by not being able to read the room. Now, I'm always true to myself. You guys know that I'm just that guy. I'm at the age now. What you see is what you get, and so and I'm not ashamed of it. But I can also read a room a lot better now too, so I can adjust how intensely I pursue a particular belief or not as well. So as a leader, you've got to be able to read the room when you're bringing up these ideas, or when ideas are brought up, or when you start talking about, when your committees are going out there and then coming back and you're hearing crickets, and then you start realizing, okay, maybe this isn't such a big hit anymore. Maybe we need to pivot to something that's going to be a little more fresh for the newer members that are going to have more energy to carry the torch going forward. Speaking
And I
of,
think
yes.
that's Dennis, such an important part is, how do you engage members on the different levels of where they're at, right? Are you reading the room? Are you getting buy-in before you do it from the east? All these things that we've previously mentioned, here on things. But if somebody's new, right, that might be new to them. But it's good principles of leadership is having somebody that's going to be the sounding board, who's going to push back on your ideas and make sure you've thought them out. Getting buy-in and managing that change management relationship, right? Of, hey, we're doing something new in the lodge. What does that look like? What are the fail points of that? What's going to happen if this doesn't go off well, right? And making sure that's all managed up front. And this is a great way to, even if you're not a manager in your professional life, this is a great way to get some of those skills, to be able to to be able to build your repertoire in those opportunities and become a better man and do those things elsewhere as well. And also lean on those members of your lodge who've done that. A lot of those past, the joke is all the past masters want to say, well, in my year, okay, well, maybe in their year there was some good stuff. What is the good stuff that you can pull out of them and say, well, how did you do this? Or how did you handle that? Or, hey, we tried this 5 years ago. It flopped. Well, maybe it's time to revisit that because the change management wasn't there well. Or maybe it was, and people just got tired and the next guy didn't pick it up. Right? What does that look like long term? So a lot of managerial skills that people can learn and apply to in masonry.
One negative about that, one negative about that is that in organizations like Freemasonry, and I've heard the Rotary Club, the church board, whatever it is, you also have to be careful because you don't want you don't want the wrong person to feel like that they've got too much power. In other words, that they don't have authority in their professional life, or they're trying to fill a void where they're not the leader that they want to be, and then they come into an organization like this, and maybe it's a power vacuum, or maybe they end up in a role of authority over time and they're really not suited for it, and they end up hurting things and not, and then you can't get them to acquiesce because their egos won't allow them to step away.
I've definitely had my share of
That's
overbearing past masters, for sure.
that's when you got to watch out for those secretaries who won't let it go.
It's a fact.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm sorry,
That's a
Dennis. Who's our
fact.
brother secretary?
Hey, I've only been a secretary a year, Daniel. It takes a
Oh,
little
you haven't gotten drunk on the power yet, huh, Jeff?
You're right. Actually, I had a guy called me the other. I'm the secretary down in Moulton, and and love the brother to death. And he called me and he's like, "Hey, can we do this at the meeting?" And I said, "No, no, 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 no. You need to call the worship master. I do not have authority in that world. I will not have authority in that world. Don't even tell him that you asked me about it. Just call and talk to him."
I agree. I agree. I will tell people if it's legal or not, and I will tell them what it's going to take to keep us out of Grand Lodge jail, but I am not the decision maker at all. I am only there to support my lodge. That's it. I'm there to support my worshipful master and and uh, and all the rest of the officers. Even if I don't agree with everything, I'm not going to be the guy that is the negative nanny on the sidelines, you know, shooting down everything that they want to do behind their back. That's not me. I am going to support them and let the lodge decide. That's the one thing I will always do is I will always remind the officers that's a lodge vote. That's not your vote. And that's what I had as as a as a master during my year. I had one person, Joe K. Hooten. And I could tell by the look on his face if what I was saying was a good idea or a bad idea. He would give me a look of disgust that was so pitiful before he ever said anything. And then he would always say, if it's good for the lodge, do it. If it's not, don't. And everyone gets one vote. And he would always say that. But I could tell before he said that by the look on his face how bad it was that I had just told him. You know, that's he was a good gauge. But he never really, there was only a couple of things that he really told me I probably shouldn't do or try. Otherwise, he was probably my biggest cheerleader at the same time. But he would always give me that solid foundation of if it's good for the lodge, do it. If it's not, don't. And then he would always say, you know, it's always a lodge vote. And that's why I believe that I'm as successful as I am today supporting the lodge, because I truly believe that, and it's instilled in me now. By the way, I want to tell everybody that's jumped on here lately, you know, glad to have you here. Uh, Bob the Nailer, Lee Hill Country's here, Bingo's here. There's just several people who have popped up in the chat, and I'm glad all of y'all are here. Glad you're all able to make it tonight.
So Dennis, in the YouTube chat, there's a question is from Lee H. How do you define quote if it's good for the lodge end quote?
It's a good question. That's a good question. Well, as a good leader, being able to read the room and understand the culture of the lodge, uh, is it going to go against the vision? You always number one, as a leader of a lodge, you should have a vision for the lodge, or the lodge should have a vision. If you don't have a vision for the lodge or a purpose for your lodge, if your lodge does not have a vision statement, then you need to call a past masters meeting. And past masters, because they're the vested interests of the lodge. Now you invite everybody, but you call a past masters meeting because you want as many of them as possible there. And you come up with these thoughts, and then you put it into a vision. Now, a lot of times a master can go to this meeting and say, hey, I thought about this vision for us. I think it really encapsulates what we believe as a culture in our lodge. And what do you guys think? How can we tweak this? Now, don't forget, we want to try to implement, a little more education now, and we're trying to implement these things. So we want to capture that in our vision as well. So, how do we shape this? That's number one. Then every decision that you make, you balance it just like the feather on the scale. You balance it against that vision. If it holds true to what that vision is for the lodge, what that culture is of the lodge, then it's good for the lodge. If it's in left field and you're just trying to spitball to do something, you're going to cause disruption, and the lodge isn't going to take it as well. Things like that, you have to work on and build up to it. You don't just, try to get it pushed through. And you never, ever, ever, and if I didn't say it, you never wait until the lodge is empty, like on 4th of July, and try to pass something through, like a new bylaw or new rules and regulations or anything like that, when there's not many members present. If you want to cause disruption in your lodge, that's what you do. So that's not good for your lodge. So I hope that helps with, that's how I gauge it. I always gauge it to the culture and the vision of the lodge. And now we have crickets. I did see on there where y'all are talking about Brother Chris Galloway, and his book. It's an excellent book. And just so that y'all know, I'm planning to have a discussion with Chris. He has a new presentation regarding the duties of the officers, and we are going to record a show together and discuss the duties of the officers. And because there's so many that are elected that are just going through the motions, as we discussed way early in this show, that they're just still kind of going through the motions of lodge because they don't really know what to do next. And they really don't know their positions. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know what's best for how their position really should contribute to the success of the lodge. And so we're going to have a show with that very thing in mind to help all the new officers that are being installed right now in the season. User D2GX, 5-year plan, absolutely. That 5-year plan is, well, number one, every year there should be, a version of that 5-year plan that captures the vision and purpose of the lodge. That's what the 5-year plan is doing. You're building it around the vision of the lodge for the future. Is it set in stone? Absolutely not. But is it what you should use as your rule and guide to all your practices? Absolutely. That's part of your litmus test on if it's good for the lodge. If it's part of the plan that has already been established by the members of your lodge, then that's what you need to do. I see you brought up Fort Worth Lodge. Are you talking about 148, Daniel?
There was a question of like, where, meeting in Fort Worth and somebody about, getting in contact possibly with somebody in Fort Worth and getting, maybe knocking on the lodge door. If they're in Fort Worth 148 is a great lodge. They have a great website to reach out to.
Yep.
And can get connected with a time they can meet up with somebody and
and
get more information.
is in Arlington as well. If they're in between Fort Worth and more in the centralized area of that side of town, the side that we don't like to travel in. If you're from Dallas, then just kidding. Fort Worth 148 is awesome. Arlington Lodge is awesome. If you need help getting to that website or getting a hold of somebody, give me a holler. I know people in both lodges that would love to have a conversation with you ahead of time before you just show up at the doors. But they both have excellent programs on taking people from Mister to Mason, and I strongly believe in them, and I strongly believe in the members of those lodges. You have some of the strongest people in Texas Freemasonry in those lodges. Not to put anyone on a pedestal, everyone here on our show are excellent Texas Freemasons.
Hey
Really,
now.
really, y'all are, except for one. I'm sorry, Mike. You're on the outskirts on that one. But he's an excellent Chicagoan. Is it Chicagoan? Mason?
Detroit.
Okay, Detroit, Michigan. That's right. That's right. Detroit. He's
Michigan.
an excellent
Yep.
Michigan Mason. So,
Yeah, I was just going to jump in if I can on the topic of what's
Go
good
right
for the lodge.
yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, what's just coming up for me is the common sense, you know, around the lodge reputation and lodge integrity. I mean, when you're in general, when you're building up the reputation or you're building up the integrity, which is kind of like the internal structure of it or the external facing aspect of it, then that's generally going to be good for whatever else you're going to try and do in the long run. You know, just something common sense like if you establish a higher level of ritual within your lodge, then anybody who happens to come and visit on any given week or any given month from a different lodge is going to say, "Oh wow, they've got that going on," and that just creates that conversation around your local region. And that's always going to be good for a lodge. People are going to say, "Oh, you know, so and so's got their act together."
I agree, and we did downplay the ritual a little bit at the beginning of the show when we were comparing it to just knowing the ritual versus going deeper than that. But I agree 100%.
Well, I don't think that's the only way. I mean, there's other ways to establish a reputation, but
well, no, I think that is one of the main reasons that Goliad became as solid as they did was because we created a foundation based on ritual that nobody in South Texas was doing, and we were the only lodge that I knew of at the time that could perform all the degrees with its own members, and we actually would pile up in the car in either, well, usually it was Regina's expedition. Calhoun would take his wife's expedition, and we would all pile up into it and drive around to these different lodges and do degrees. And I'm going to tell you, that's some of the best times I remember as a young Mason. And I wasn't even that young then, but as a young Mason, that was some of the best times I remember having, because we would get in some of the deepest conversations that we would have in our lodge. And they wouldn't be all that deep, really. I mean, we're talking about guys that hung their hat on ritual, right? So, yeah, we knew ritual, but we didn't really go too much deeper than that all the time. But we would have great debates. It was awesome being stuck in a car with 7 other guys that thought differently than you did on different topics of esotericism. But but it was always fun, and man, I recommend it to anybody. If you can build that up in your lodge, build that foundation, and then travel around and help other lodges. I mean, Mike, you're right. I mean, if you exude that excellence, people look to your lodge as a leader in the area, and you have a better opportunity to help aid and assist your brothers.
And just to piggyback off of that, would you mention those conversations? And that's another way. You know, if your lodge isn't specialized in ritual, you might be a lodge that has great conversations. And then anybody who comes to your dinner beforehand, or comes to your lunch, to Daniel's point, is thinking, wow, those guys they're not just talking about the X's and O's of the monthly budget for this and that, or they're really connecting the dots and applying the principles to topics in everyday life and personal growth, and they're really applying the wisdom. And that's another way I think that that's always going to be good for the lodge, because it's going to establish your reputation with external lodges.
I agree. I agree. And bragging on the people who can do those things. I believe that we should talk up people and their strengths. So we have people that are really excellent ritualists in our fraternity. We do. I mean, it's just hands down. We have people that have memories like nobody's business. And then we've got guys that can really take it to the next level on deep thinking, going down those rabbit holes. And we've got guys that are all about the social aspect and just creating a comfortable environment for everybody to sit in. I think one of the most wasted opportunities of the new officers is identifying those strengths in the members. Because when we identify those strengths, it's a big book. I mean, they dumbed it down to some degree recently, but we have a big book on mentorship in Texas Freemasonry. And um, it's an excellent program to where you can create a mentorship program so that as soon as people walk through the door, you're attaching them to different people to them to help them through all the processes. Anything that's going on, you've got different people walking them through the different stages of what they've got going on. If you don't know the membership's strengths, then you can't do that. In fact, 148 is really good with that. They have a great mentorship program ahead of time before you become a Mason, before you're allowed to submit your petition. They have a great um, mentorship program that gets you there, that gets you ready before it's time. And then uh, Hillcrest does the same thing in Dallas. They've got a great program to help people get there before it's time. And I think it's proven with their success rates and their retention rates more than anything uh, of those strengths. And I think we all should to some degree try to implement those things in our lodges. And so I'll keep talking. But if his if you know those strengths, then you always have somebody to point somebody to if they walk in the door. And if they ask certain questions, don't try to answer questions you don't know. Send them to the guy who knows. Don't make yourself look out of your depth and cause somebody to turn away because they feel like well, this isn't what I thought Freemasonry was, so I'm going to just walk away. I'll just go somewhere else. I'll spend my time in some other place. Get them in touch with the right person in
I'll
your
go.
lodge to help you out. Go ahead, Daniel. Thank you.
They'll go find all the weird conspiracy theories on the Reddit subthreads. Um, on the internet instead of going and finding Masonic improvement and the great opportunity you could have by being an inner circle member. But anyways, I'm gonna stop hard pitching that one for just a second. Um, but I think you're right, Dennis. If you don't know your members, that's gonna be the first thing, right? Is get to know the members, get to know what they do. I was we've got quite a few guys in my lodge who are really good with the memory work, right? With that ritual catechism, whatever you want to call it, right? They are really good at that. And we've got some members who have been around for a long time, who are really great people. You know, you just can, if you want to talk and chat and get to know somebody and have that sense of friendship and brotherhood, they're your guys for that, right? And some of those guys cross over between both of those spots, but some of them are one or the other. And you don't want the guy who's looking for a lot of friendship and brotherhood to be with the guy who's the hardcore ritualist who's not going to help have friendship, right? Maybe he needs to be partnered with the guy who knows ritual, but also is a friendly guy, or they need both, right? You need to partner them up with both people. And I think that's one of the really great things as we think about in Texas Freemasonry, it was called the All program that every new Mason should go through as they're being raised. And part of that is to actually have them understand and know more than one or two people in the lodge. So that way they know, oh, I know, you know, brother so and so and brother X and brother Y and brother Z. And, oh, this one and I, we go out and watch the baseball game together. And this other one does this and this other one does this. And I'm just thinking about my Freemasonry and how it happened with me is I've got 3 or 4 brothers that are just core. These are my guys, call them up at midnight. They're going to answer the phone call. They're going to take care of that, and that's grown out maybe even now to 5 or 6 guys that are really those core guys. But I also have other brothers in the lodge I can make that same phone call to. And I know they're not even going to ask me what's up. They're just going to show up because that's the type of guys they are. And then I have other guys who I can call at midnight and they'll return my call tomorrow and they're going to make sure it's taken care of. It's just different levels, but I also have to know them. We have to have done some things together. That's what that lunch is important, or a breakfast, or the fish fry. Those things are important because that's when you get to know guys. Serving shoulder to shoulder, doing those activities. And that's why it's important to have things like that. Do you have a widows committee? Does somebody need a new porch built? Or a repair done on the house or something like that. Those things are activities as men. That's where we bond so well together, not just in lodge, not just at dinner, but some of those guys you're never going to really understand and meet until you're working shoulder to shoulder with them on something. That could be the fish fry, or that could be something totally different because that's not their thing, right? Their thing is, I'm not a big fish eater. I really don't want to show up for the fish fry because I don't like fish. That's my main contention with the fish fries. I don't like to eat fish.
That's funny.
I don't want to show up to cook it, to eat it, because I'm not going to eat it, but we do a monthly breakfast. Man, I'm going to show up to that because I like ham. I like eggs and bacon. You know, we tore down a barbecue, a brick barbecue at our lodge. Guys showed up for that because they like doing that type of work.
You just broke
They
my
enjoy
heart.
that. So they showed up for that. Well, it was Dennis. It was there for multiple years, and the brickwork was completely broken out. It actually broke the first time they lit it up.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was long overdue to be demolished and taken off. But I mean, that's the type of opportunity as well for men to serve together, to work together, because that's as men, that's a one way we connect really well.
Yeah,
But if you don't know the skills of the guys, how are we going to do that?
I agree. And that's where you know, you bring up barbecue at Oso Naval. We've got or not Oso, at Corpus 189. We've got a barbecue pit that's it's almost as big as my living room. It's huge, and they like to do a fundraiser every year um, with different chicken, sausage. They stay up smoking all night long. And what's interesting is, you have certain people that love doing barbecue, even in the regular times. What are you doing this weekend? Oh man, we're barbecuing. We're going to be sitting out by the grill, barbecuing. That's what we do. We just barbecue. And so those are the guys that are going to be handling your barbecue fundraiser. They're going to be cooking all of it and getting everything prepared and ready for it. And like you said, you got the fish fry guys and you've got, the esoteric guys. I'm not I'm not always the first person that you want somebody to meet when you walk into a lodge. I'm usually the last person you want them to meet before, but for that final sign off before they get a petition, because because I can be a little bit much for people when it comes to what I believe Freemasonry is, and I don't want to run people off, but I will sometimes because I have very specific thoughts on on some things that I really don't want to deter away from, or I don't want to minimize. And so some of those conversations, they're not ready for it anyways. So I'm not always the person that you want them to meet on the first day that they walk in the door. And you won't know that unless you have those opportunities for guys to serve. Another good one is Hodge Cleanup Day. Man, you get to figure out who's good at, fixing electrical stuff, who's good at changing light bulbs, who's good at just washing down the counters, who's good at sweeping. You find out people's talents when you have a lodge cleanup day. And then you know who you want to put on your building committee next year. By doing those kinds of things. Whoever brings the truck full of tools, that's the guy you want on your building committee, because he's the one that's going to answer the call any time of day or night and be there if it's something that can be done without having to call a contractor. But sometimes that's not the right person to have either, because then they try to do everything themselves instead of calling a contractor when they should. But anyways, I think we've beaten this horse pretty good. What do y'all think? Okay, well, I take that as a yes, we have. So are there any other questions out there in the chat?
Everybody's looking for their mute button.
Well, somebody go ahead. Any other ideas or any other questions out in the chat world? Out of the box ideas?
I think one of the things that we do in my region is our MWSA has a traveling gavel, and that promotes groups of brothers traveling to other lodges across the area, across the region. Um, I'm not sure if there's anything that is put into place that would entice brothers to go further than just the district or well, our MWSA covers several districts. Um, but I believe I don't
In
remember which
Texas,
state
there's
it
a
was, but
traveling
there was
belt.
something. Sure, sure. There was something I remember reading on Reddit quite some time ago that if it was, I want to say it was something somewhere up in the Midwest, and they were doing a thing similar to that, but it was with the Masonic passport, and um, if you got your passport stamped by a lodge in each of the districts in their state, which obviously would be rather cumbersome in Texas, um, but if you visited a lodge in each district, you got recognized at Grand Lodge or something like that for doing a lot of traveling in a year. And I think that just anything we can do to promote traveling, which would in turn promote the discussion of various ideas that are from other places, because bringing that stuff and seeing it firsthand and bringing it back to where we're at is going to assist with that. One of the things that we do in my lodge down in tiny little southeast Texas, we are religious about giving out the Honesty and Integrity Award. In fact, the My Home Lodge was the first lodge that did it in the state of Texas. One of our brothers found it in Louisiana. That was where the Honesty and Integrity Award came from. So similar to us getting our very first charter in the state of Texas, that's where we got our Honesty and Integrity Award as well. And it was something that was brought up. I want to say it was about 15 or 16 years ago was the first time they did it. I hate to try to quote it and get it wrong, but it was around that time, and it recognizes a high school junior, one boy and one girl from the junior class, and we take that information and we go down to the guidance counselor's office and we say, hey, you guys interface with these kids, pull up your dictionary, look at the definition of honesty and integrity, and when you read that, which two kids come to mind? and we thank them and we recognize them because especially in the springtime when all the seniors are getting their accolades for their scholarships and all that, this is something for the junior class, and it allows them that latitude. But we took that. We got a permission from the Grand Lodge that year at my home lodge. I was not a Mason at the time. I wasn't even. I guess I was in Texas. I had just moved to Texas at the time. But the uh, the issue, and it was allowed for that first year, and then I believe it was allowed the following year, and then the third year that we did it, we actually one of our past masters submitted a a proposal at Grand Lodge, and it was added to the law book that it was going to be a perpetually allowed thing, and that's where that honesty and integrity comes from. I know I've gone to officer leadership training, and the brothers talk about all the different awards and community outreach events and stuff that we can do. Um, and I think that was one that always kind of puzzled everybody because nobody knew where it was or what it came from. But that was something that Southeast Louisiana stole, or Southeast Texas stole from one of the lodges in Louisiana, and we brought it over to Texas, and that's something that we do in our community. But stuff like that, it's the traveling to those other lodges is where we found something like that. And I think the traveling and doing the traveling is what's going to promote those good ideas.
I agree. I agree
I'll
100%.
go off of that if that's all right.
Go
Yep.
ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the pretty much the exact same thing. You know, is steel sharpens steel. So if you have a good idea and you take it to other guys, and it's going to get refined, and that short distance travel, there's a lot to be said for that, and to taking those ideas and not being afraid, because just like the brother in the chat who had the question about what's good for the lodge, I mean, that's a question you can bring, and you go to another lodge in the district or locally, and you're going to get 10 different answers if you talk to 10 different guys, and you might say, oh, I got this idea from my lodge, and that feedback you're going to get is only going to refine that idea. You know, you don't just keep it to yourself afraid that someone's going to shoot it down, because you want to bring it out there and let it get sharpened by other people and say, oh, you know, has this been tried in your region, or how might that look, or what's the feedback been? So I was thinking the exact same thing about that short distance travel.
I I agree on, and I think that the more the more um, you plan to expand your your knowledge, the more traveling you have to do. The further out you have to go. You know, I personally wouldn't vote for anyone for Grand Lodge that hasn't traveled to different states and visited other Grand Lodges, and gotten to know and built relationships with other um, officers in different jurisdictions, grand jurisdictions, because while we talk about the district level, and we talk about even beyond the district level, because our district, typically in Texas, our districts are kind of cookie cutter, as all the lodges in the district are pretty much the same. And then you move over to the next district over, and it's got a little bit of variation, but it's kind of the same also. But you can learn some new stuff from that different district, and you go to an even further district, and you're learning stuff that's a little bit different than even that. So the further out you go, the more information that you can, the more knowledge you can gain and take back and bring back to your lodge. I think it's extremely important. That's why we've always said book time and travel time. And Mike, you're absolutely right. Steel sharpens steel, and we require that of each other to become um, better human beings. If everything was easy, nothing would ever change. We have to go through the struggle to come out on the other side with with wisdom. We can gain all the knowledge we want to, but without the struggle or the back and forth with other people, uh, We're just not going to have that wisdom until you come out on the other side of it. Brother Lee H. Hill Country, yes, he's one of our largest travelers. He travels all over. He's been to several lodges here lately on the East Coast, and you should be back around town now, aren't you? By the way, you've got another Chicago Freemason bearded conversation. That's another Chicago Mason in our midst. Glad to see you. Glad you made it tonight. As I started traveling, in fact, it was very tough when I first started traveling. We did it within our district and with the neighboring district, doing ritual and stuff like that early on when I was Mason. But when I realized that I knew that we didn't have all the answers within our districts in South Texas, in our area, I realized that I had to start traveling to gain more understanding of what Freemasonry is. That was tough. That was difficult because I was leaving my comfort zone with some brothers that I really trusted, and I came back with ideas that were not very popular, and it was kind of tough. That was part of the reason why I came on the show with Justin years ago. Was I started finding my people out in the great wide yonder and realized that people needed to have a place to go to come across these different ideas and to contemplate different thoughts, things to help them progress in their personal journey. That's why it was important to me to be a part of Masonic Improvement. And when Justin wanted to retire from the show, that's why it was so important to me to continue to do the work, because I know that we're not finished, and we won't be finished for years to come. There's too much work to be done. We're in such a transitional period right now in Freemasonry that we really need brothers who are willing to talk it out and work it out and give people something to think about in their own journey, so that we can get there. Well, I'm glad you're safely back, Brother Hill Country. I see that, and one of these days soon, I want to come up there and see you. I've been wondering, because I've been wanting to come up there and see you. And he just brought up another good point. Sometimes the answers are in the Scottish Rite, York Rite, and Shriners. Sometimes those answers you're looking for are in those places. The thing is, though, is that with those bodies, what we really ought to be doing is bringing those answers back to the Blue Lodge. That should be our job as Masons that are growing, is what we learn, bring it back to our home lodge to help it to grow, so that we can bring everybody with us and not just rise above, if that makes sense. That sounded kind of bad, but we need to take everybody with us. Before you say anything, Brother Atcher, I want to say this one thing. There's a church that I used to go to that he said, my job is to take as many people to heaven as possible before I die, period. And it's like, okay, that's a good thing to aspire to. Well, I kind of feel the same way with Freemasonry. Our job is to bring as many people up with us as we learn this stuff. It's only fitting that we help the next guy in line to make his journey a little bit easier, or hers, depending on your grand jurisdiction. I just want to throw that out there, because I don't have anything against females being in Freemasonry. I just know that our jurisdiction doesn't allow it, and I personally enjoy the brotherhood that I'm in, but I think that there should be a sisterhood of sorts. That's just me. Just to throw another monkey wrench out there.
I'm just gonna plug the Order of the Eastern Star and the Rainbow Girls, Dennis, before we get in any further trouble than we already might be with that comment. Love you, my brother.
Yeah,
In
this is
Texas, you can
this
happily
is
join the
Texas.
Order of the Eastern Star or the Rainbow Girls. So yes, I'm a zip it from there.
That's so funny. That's
No
so
plugs about the opinions are only ours and nobody else's.
This is a good
Oh
place
yes,
to
the
put
opinions
that.
expressed in this podcast are those of each individual Mason, and not any particular Grand Lodge, jurisdiction, or particular lodge, or any accordant or appendant bodies.
Especially that of the host. That's funny.
So
What you got
I've
for
got a
Brad?
question for you, Dennis, and it kind of piggybacks on what you were saying, and I'd like your opinion and the opinion of anybody else that wants to chime in. I am, relatively new to Masonry. As we talked about some of the last few times, I am in the line. I am currently the senior warden elect at my lodge. Um, and I was talking with another distinguished brother who I respect very well and who is well respected across the state. And he was talking about the appendant bodies. And, we had the conversation. I have opted, promised myself, and I discussed it with my wife, and it wasn't necessarily a promise at that point, but I've promised myself, and I think that's enough for me, that I'm not going to join any appendant bodies until after I have completed going through the line in Blue Lodge. Just for the simple fact that I was asked to jump in the line, and I knew that it was going to take some time, and I want to make sure that I dedicate the time that it's required, or that would be required. So I'm not spreading myself thin. I'm not going to do it, and that's my personal stance on it right now. I may change my mind at some point in the next year or two, um, but the opinion of this brother was that there are some lessons in the York Rite that might prove especially useful to me as I go into the East, and that he recommended that I reconsider my opinion and potentially join the York Rite and receive some of those lessons before going into the East. And I'm not sure that I want to do that and jump into something like that halfway, when I've got so much other stuff going on. I just kind of want to get everybody's opinion on that. So what do you think there?
So I'll go. So it took me a long time to finish my work. My fault, nobody else's. And then almost immediately I joined the York Rite, and I haven't looked back. Um, the York Rite opens doors that you can't even imagine. Um, excuse me. The first degree in York Rite Masonry, in my opinion, is out of order. It belongs between the fellow. Well, it actually is the second half of the fellowcraft, but that's another story. But um, the lessons that you learn going through the York Rite are incredible, and they answer questions you don't even know you have. The other thing that I'll say about the appendant bodies, I'm not a Scottish Rite Mason, but I can't imagine that the experience is wholly different than York Rite Masonry, is it gets you around guys that really like being Masons because they've taken the steps to make the commitment to learn further, to take in more light, if you will. Then you do like you do with lodges, and you start joining more different chapters and councils and whatnot. But I absolutely cannot stress enough. I mean, even my son, he was raised as a master mason, and then quickly got quickly went through a festival and became a York Rite Mason. And I think he would tell you that he enjoys those as much, or those degrees as much, or anything as he has seen in his young Masonic career. So from the thrice illustrious master elect of the El Camino Real Council of Royal and Select Masters, I would wholeheartedly endorse your considering joining the York Rite as soon as you possibly can.
And now for the rest of the story. Just kidding. I am a York Rite Mason as well, and I am also a Scottish Rite Mason. And I joined the York Rite right after I became a Master Mason, and yeah, the lessons are bold in the York Rite. They're very bold in the Scottish Rite as well. The In fact, I found my place more in the Scottish Rite. Now, I will say that when I was going through the line, I did not I didn't involve myself too much with the York Rite while I was going through the line. I was focused more on what we were doing right there in Blue Lodge, and um, could it have helped me if I had been more active and really was focusing on those degrees? Probably. But do you really have the time to do that when you're um, trying to be effective in a busy lodge? There's always that that you know back and forth that you're going to have to weigh out on your own. Now, I wanted to join the Scottish Rite for a long time, but I specifically waited until after I was worshipful master of my lodge before I joined the Scottish Rite, because I knew I wouldn't have the time to really put into it that I wanted to put into it, because I knew that once I started on down the rabbit holes, that I wouldn't be able to stop. And I still to this day give lectures in the York Rite as well on topics. In fact, I'm scheduled to present for 2 AMD councils and the Night Masons here, in July, and at a festive board. And I love the lessons of both bodies. That's just something that's going to be tough for you to decide on for yourself, because it's all going to depend on your bandwidth and how committed you want to be to it um, once you do join. And because people are going to tug at you no matter what appendant body you join, whether it's the shrine, the grotto, the York Rite, Scottish Rite, whatever. People are going to tug at you because everybody is wanting to see their body successful. And so you'll have plenty of opportunities to serve once you do join those groups. And that's the biggest contemplation that you have to make for yourself is that going to be beneficial to my Blue Lodge if I do that? Just because you have already accepted the officer lineup. So that one you are committed to, in my opinion. Whereas the rest of it is,
Yes.
optional at this point. But yeah, there's excellent lessons in it all. I mean, for sure.
The other thing, the other thing, sorry, Dennis, the other
Go
thing
ahead.
important to remember that that maybe you don't know is there's no esoteric requirement. So it's not like when you receive all the degrees in chapter and council that you then have to sit down and learn the catechism for all those. Um, I would encourage you to spend time in the ritual, but you don't have the requirement like you do in the Blue Lodge. So you can get those lessons, and then you can discuss them, you know, with the guys in chapter and council. And I know where you I know where you live. I know where you go to lodge, and there are a bunch of fantastic York Rite Masons around you, that I consider assets to Masonry, as does probably, you know, most everybody else. But um, I I I'm I'm a better Mason in my own eyes and for myself because of what I've learned in the York Rite, the Commandery, um, the little bit that I've seen in AMD, because it seems like I'm busy every year during the festival, um, and even Night Masons in the little bit of time that I've been a Night Mason.
Yeah, I think.
I would jump in and say that. Oh, sorry, Dennis.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say that in my brief experience, sometimes these more experienced brothers will push on you just to see if you'll change once they hear that you've made your mind up about something. And a lot of times it is good to just stick with what you initially told yourself you were going to do, because that's what, you know, just on listening to you three guys and my own journey, which is still starting off, you know, there is a different journey for everybody. And I'm looking to get involved in the York Rite before I even get into the line in my lodge. You know, that's just what I said. I'm not going to rush into the line. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, and I've talked to people, and some guys will say, oh, you got to jump in the line right away. And the other guys say, oh, that's an interesting way to do it. You know, you don't need to jump. You can just sit on the sidelines and then go ahead and study here and there, and show up each week, and, you know, work on my junior ritualist and my other ambitions that I'm interested in. And, you know, so I really appreciated that feedback about the York Rite. That just kind of cemented it for me that that's really something that I'm excited about. And that was just what kind of came up, because I had noticed that some guys will push back on you just to see if you'll change, and they don't necessarily want you to change. They just want to see if you will change, and or if you're going to stick to what you said you were going to do.
That's funny.
Jacob, do you have a chapter and council in your home lodge?
I do not, but we we have two of them that are within 20 minutes from me. There's one that's really close to where I work at. So I work about 45 minutes from the house, and it's in the same area as where I take my son to Demolay and my daughters to Rainbow.
That'd probably be your best.
And I am 100% sure, Jeff, you know exactly who was prompting me to join the York Rite, because the conversation was had at Rainbow's Grand Assembly last weekend. And it's
Yeah.
all the same people that are involved in all the youth organizations. And I love him dearly. He's a great friend.
I bet I know who you're talking about too.
Yeah, I think, you know, not, and so my thing with the Scottish Rite, and no offense to the Scottish Rite folks in the world, um, my problem with the Scottish Rite is where I live. In order for me to get to a meeting, it logistically doesn't make sense, right? I mean, I'm you know, I'm an hour and a half from San Antonio. Depending on traffic, I'm an hour and a half, an hour, at least an hour, if not an hour and a half from Austin. And don't even get me started about trying to get down to the Houston Scottish Rite. So for me, you know, I believe that if we're going to join something, we need to be as active as possible. And I don't think Scottish Rite I can do that. And then even as I started my York Rite journey, I joined in Seguin, because that's the chapter and council that approached me. And then over the last year or so, I started to visit over in Smithville, and I really like that group of guys. And then I affiliated, and so I'm on the path to become companion recorder in both the chapter and the council here in the next couple of years, after I move through the principal officer chairs. So it's a different kind of masonry, and we have so much fun. Even whether it was, was at Guadalupe with the San Marcos guys, or in Smithville with the new freshly renamed El Camino Real. And then and then then you can go to Grand Chapter and Council in December, which is a very small, it's a lower auditorium. You meet in the lower auditorium in Waco. It's a much smaller group, but it's a very tight knit group. And what I've found is that running in that circle, attending those kind of events, you really make some fantastic connections. Um, and you being active, Jacob, and Demolay and Rainbow, I mean, if you look around the room, it's the same guys, right? So if you look at the if you look at the Masonic Youth Committee, every one of them, with the exception, I think Big Mike is the only one that's not a Yorkright Mason, and the rest of them are, either past Grand officers, past Grand Line officers, York, just really good group of guys.
Man, you're pushing the hard sell tonight, Jeff.
Hey, it took me a long time to get here, and if I can help somebody make a decision, that's what I want to do.
No, I get it, and I agree. There are a lot of different opportunities within the York Rite, and I think people ought to take that journey. I think people ought to take that journey because you do meet so many more people that expounds upon your reach and really your knowledge, because you'll meet people from, not just your local area, but you'll meet people from, far west Texas and North Texas and all that in the different events and things like that, and it'll really uh, really help you to gain a good understanding of the administrative side of things, but and help you
Dude, how about
if you have any types of aspirations or whatever.
how about
But
this? When you join the York Rite, totally your decision. After you get the Mark Master degree, if I'm not in the room, I want you to call me, because I want to hear you say, "Holy cow! Why didn't I know this stuff?" And then I'll say, "Telling you, buddy, got to join the York Rite."
and that's what's so funny though is that some of those York Rite degrees, they used to be part of the things that were discussed in Blue Lodge Masonry back before there was a York Rite.
I tell people it's like Star Wars; they're out of order.
And they are, and that's
It,
because
it should go.
they dumb down
And you know
Blue Lodge
this, if
Masonry.
you're like, if you say, if you're a Blue Lodge Mason and you say, "Hey, I'm going to go to England. I want to go to the Grand Lodge of England and sit in a meeting." Not if you're not a Mark Master.
This is true. This is true. But either way, that's a very personal decision and a very tough decision to make. For me personally, I
Now,
waited
if you
until
join,
I waited.
if you what if you join Port Neches, is that the chapter and council over there? Do
Yes.
they confer their own degrees? I think they confer their own degrees, don't they? Or
I'm
you'd
not
have to
sure.
go through a festival. I would be willing to bet that they confer their own degrees, because that's a pretty strong group over there. That would be cool too. I went through a festival, which there's nothing wrong with, but if I could have gotten those degrees over the course of a couple of months, or even, a month, as opposed to drinking from a fire hose, because now I try to go to every festival that I can if I can get there, if only because then I can sit through the degrees again, because you're just, you know, you're you're just pulling stuff out of them all the time.
Yeah, that's I don't even like performing in a festival at all, because I want to just sit there and absorb information. I'm that's the way I feel about it. And in the Scottish Rite, even most of the time I there's only a couple of degrees that I even help with. I'm degree master of one, but I only help with a couple of others, and otherwise I'm doing the audio video, and that way I can sit there and absorb it all every time we go through a reunion, because that's my deal. I don't like performing all the degrees. I like actually sitting and listening to it and taking it apart in my mind every time I get to sit down, because there are very valuable lessons in all of it. But it's a very personal decision, so it's a tough one to make on your own. But it's a tough one to make, but you got to make it on your own for sure. But there, you do have people. You have some really great Masons that can support you in that decision if you decide to make it. And if you do decide to, just make sure you tell them, you know, you're going to hold off on doing any of the administrative stuff until after your Blue Lodge tenure. Go in it for the mysteries, not for the administrative, in my opinion.
I think that's going to be the hard part. Is there's only 24 inches on the gauge, and needing to take time to really. I mean, we talk about the mysteries, but it's more than just seeing the degrees. That's not a. I don't. I just. I guess maybe because I haven't experienced that, I just don't see it as like that. That wouldn't be the end for me. I would have to. I would have to study it and learn it, and then there's more books to read and more. And that's where I'm seeing the time is. I don't know. I'm just ah, but that it. You guys have given me great, much more information to think about. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
have to I have to do that even today with all the different organizations I'm a part of, and I'm a member of several lodges, as well as the Shrine, the Grotto, York Rite, Scottish Rite, Commandery, York Rite in chapter council and Commandery, and I have to make decisions every year where I'm going to spend my time, because it's a lot, and as long as the people that you're in it with understands where you're at, and what your expectations on yourself are, then it's good to have good healthy boundaries. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
have
To
to have
that,
that conversation with myself every year along with my wife.
yeah, to that point, I'm not nearly as active in commandery as I'd like to be, but that is such a big time commit, like to do it properly, right? Because you've got the monthly, you've got the stated conclave, and then most commanderies are practicing one night a week, or one, Sunday afternoon, one night a week, something, because you've got a drill, right? Because you've got your yearly inspection where you put on the order of the temple and then you have your inspection. I can't commit that much time. I don't have it with everything else.
Yep, I agree. That's a big one. That's a tough one. And while I am a member of the commandery, there's just it's just impossible for me to be there for all that. And this next year, in fact, I've got to start working on it now. Um, it's time to charter a Rainbow Girls in my area, because my daughter is turning 11 next month, or actually in a month and a half, and she's been waiting. Man, she's you just wait. The next couple of months, you're going to see me posting pictures of my daughter in what she calls down dresses, and she's just grown up, in down dresses, waiting to become a rainbow girl in the beautiful white down dress. She can't wait. She can't wait to have that experience, and um, learn the things of being a young lady, and um, intelligent and caring young lady. I man, I couldn't be more proud. Of course, I'm gonna Of course, I'm going to start one for her. And I told her,
Are you
when she asked me, I said, "Are you sure this is going to be this is not a couple of years and I'm done. This is a 5-10 year commitment with us here. We're not going to be messing around. We're doing this if I'm going to put my name to it." She said, "Yes, Dad. That's what I've wanted, and it's what I still want." I said, "Okay, then we're going to do it."
are you gonna do one there in Goliad, or are you looking?
Probably so. Probably
Yeah.
so. Because we know plenty of young girls that can be a part of it here in Goliad.
Well, I'm sure you'll get plenty of support from the state, and man, I tell you, just coming back from their state assembly,
I saw
the
that.
San Antonio chapters are super involved.
Yeah.
But even then, Goliad's only like 3.5 hours from us. Let me know, and I will make the trip and do my best to bring my kiddos, and we will do that. My youngest actually just got initiated at state conclave or the state assembly. That
Oh,
was it, I got to go sit up in their Grand East up in an elevated platform on the stage and watch it all go down, and just it was so cool, so cool. Um, because they can't do the rainbow stuff at Grand Lodge. There's no way. The stage isn't big enough.
right.
The they're the official lodge room at the Grand Lodge building there in the auditorium is just it's tiny because they have drill. Like they process, and there's a procession as they come in, and there's, oh man, it is their drill is very ornate, and being able to see it, at the local level is good, but there's a lot of people, especially, there's a lot of people pulling double duty, triple duty on some of the opening and closing duties, but seeing the grand officers that practice do it, just it was awesome. it
Nice.
was it was too cool.
I can't wait. I can't wait. And I can't wait for her. I know she's excited about it. We've been she she has literally grown up at in Freemasonry, and when she was 6 months old, I don't think she was even 6 months old. She was only like 3 or 4 months old because she was born in August, and that January she was up there at Grand Lodge with us, and she was in her little carrier. And every year she would collect her little rainbow girl, stuffed animal, and she grew up with that expectation in her own heart that she wanted to do that. And so I can't be more proud and more excited at the same time that she wants to be a part of that. And I can't wait to introduce another part of Freemasonry to young ladies in the area that want to excel in being good human beings. I'm just stoked. I'm totally stoked. Out of all the things that my daughter could want to do, that that makes me most proud. Oh, before we leave, I'm going to start final thoughts here in just a second. Before we leave, I'm going to tell you another proud moment. So this weekend, a lot of y'all saw that I went to an art auction this weekend, and we were going around looking at the different pieces, and they have this one row of the masters, right? Like they have like Picasso and Rembrandt and Dürer and other masters over the years, and we're looking at these pieces, and we're talking to the guy, and I'm asking, what it would really take to be able to open a bid on one of these and all that, and these the question came up of what this one piece of art, what it even was, what the name of it was, and my daughter looks at us and she says, "That's the prodigal son." And and lo and behold, that was what that piece of art was. And I'm thinking, son of a My daughter is so impressive to me sometimes. She just comes up with this stuff and I don't even know how she got it. She just takes in all the beauties of life and is just becoming such a great human being. Instead of, thinking about Shakira as a giraffe in Zootopia, she's thinking about, fine art and the prodigal son. But anyways, that was a proud moment I had to share. I almost had to bid on it because of that. But I didn't want to have to sell one of the properties to do it. But anyways, all right. Wow, Byron came on. Glad to see you. I guess you've been watching for a while and then jumped in the chat. Glad to see you here with us, my brother. Um, so we're at that point in the night. I'm gonna give it to our newest master elect, worshipful master elect, or actually installed, worshipful Daniel Dutton.
Thank you very much, Brother Dennis Yates. I know we've talked about a lot of stuff, but let's take it back to the beginning to the quote we talked about with not spoon feeding, right? People don't want the spoon fed. And ultimately, it's up to us as future leaders and current leaders of the lodge and past leaders to encourage activity that's going to be meaningful to the members of our lodge and meet them where they're at today and help push them forward to where they want to be tomorrow. And with that, those are my final closing thoughts.
Ooh, that was good. Man, you must have thrown that in Chat GPT. That was a good one.
Nope, that's all this 7.5 inches over here between the
Nice.
two ears. Mine's a little too big today, Dennis, but
And congratulations, Daniel. I am so happy for you. I'm stoked. Congratulations to you as well, um, Brother Atcher. The being the senior warden elect. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yep. I'll be moving to the west in
Nice.
about, I guess, next month. It'll be next month.
Very nice. Well, congratulations. I am super stoked for you. And with that, we will go from the east to the west. So go ahead and give us your closing thoughts.
Right. Yeah. Before I start though, Daniel, your pin will be representing again tomorrow. I'm planning on wearing that one. We were doing a little bit of travel, and I'm taking two other brothers. We're going to Gunsight Lodge over at the Galveston Scottish Rite. So we're getting some travels in with the official mesquite pin there. So you can be proud on that one.
yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
The going back to the quote, just d- double backing on what Daniel said. It is about the work that you have to put in. It's it's chewing up the steak and potatoes and not relying on the milk of masonry. It's taking the big bites and doing the work, and we've got to start with being provided some of that information. But you don't want to stop there, and I think that's the big goal when it comes time to do the lodge administration. When it comes time to do all that, it all comes back to what do we learn, what do we try, what do we do. And knowledge is attained by degrees, but wisdom dwells in contemplation. And doing the work to study more, sit and think about things, and not just rely on only the what you can be fed from masonry is where the real value is.
Nice. Yeah, we'll just let that resonate for a second. That's a good one. I like it. Past Master Messer.
Yes, and then junior warden elect at West University, 1292. So
Well,
we have
that
made the
just kind of
circuit from
that just
the
kind of
east to
makes
the
the
south.
circuit. That's nice. Nice. Congratulations. I didn't realize
Yeah, well, because I didn't have enough to do already.
that.
I agree with what Daniel and Brother Atcher have both said. I think I think though that we should we should also be cautious because many of those around us are practicing the masonry that they came up in, and so if they just hold the line, they feel like they're doing a good job, and maybe they are. Maybe that's all they want out of it. But it's in these conversations where the like-minded folks come together and we understand that there's so much more here for us, and it's how do we get it into our local groups, um, that that can make such a difference, right? And and just a side note, I'm really struggling because there's a lot that we want to do at level at there's a lot that we want to do at Lafayette, but I just there's such a heavy lift that we've all been doing over the last year, and it's trying to figure out how do we fit education in. So um, patience is key. Um, Buy-in is critical because the last thing that I would ever want to do is to have an impact on a lodge, and then the day I step away, um, the good things we accomplished fall by the wayside, right? Um, Not to say that I'm the driving force, right? But just what I mean, right? So, in that we want to change, you can't turn a battleship in a bathtub, and sometimes it takes time. I will tell you that I am very upset that Brother Atcher is going to Gunsight because I have wanted to go to Gunsight for quite some time, especially since Worshipful Master Newberry is coming out of the East. Um, but
It's every
unfortunately,
every fifth Monday. Every fifth Monday.
as is the Juan Seguin Allied Masonic degrees. So if you want to find me tomorrow, I'll be at the Elks Lodge eating a pork steak. Um, with that, thank you all, and have a great week.
That's I feel the same way. I want to go to Gunsight. I'm not sure if I'll make it yet or not. This in fact this past weekend was it was a great fun with my family starting on Wednesday, and then lo and behold, I get to Saturday and my weekend is cut short and I'm called in. I have to work. I didn't get to go to any of the installations that I'd planned to. I was going to make the circuit. I was already in Galveston. I was going to hit 2 lodges in Houston and then shoot up to Dallas for Daniel's installation, and I didn't get to hit any of them, and it just made me ill. And I say I want to go to Gunsight. I want to be there before Carlton leaves the East, but I can't guarantee that, and I completely understand how you feel. It's we've gone through a lot tonight, and as usual, and I believe in that all of y'all have hit the nail on the head that we do need to understand where we are in our lodge and with our brethren individually so that we know what we can offer to help them to become better Masons. But at the same time, we have to realize that not all brothers are doing the same Freemasonry that we're doing. In fact, not too long ago, last year, I guess, or maybe it was the year before, um, one of the brothers that I considered as one of my mentors was pretty upset with me, and he still really is not over it. And his statement to someone else was that, you know, that's not my Freemasonry. And you know what? He's right. The Freemasonry that I'm experiencing today is not what he was initiated into. It's not what he's been practicing the last, 50 years. And this is an established Mason. He's been a Grand Marshal. It's not like he is been tucked away in his own little world within our district or within our lodge. He is an expounded upon Mason. But that wasn't the Freemasonry that he joined, and it's not the Freemasonry that he's been practicing. So we do have to keep that in mind. And that was hard for me to understand. And I still backtrack sometimes and stick my foot in my mouth and say things and do things that I shouldn't, uh, or that are a little bit harsh to those. And Jeff is laughing because yeah, I say and do things I shouldn't quite often, but
No, I do that. I do. I mean, have you guys ever watched my name tag on your on Sunday nights? I mean, I'm an idiot.
but you know, I think that has helped me to grow. And if I hadn't done the things that frustrated somebody to speak up in that manner, how would I have ever learned that simple truth? I mean, it's one of those things. You live and you learn. You learn these things because you have that 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 roughness along your journey. That roughness is what helps us to become uh, better human beings. If we don't have that conflict in our lives to some degree, then we'll just be coasting along, um, not learning anything new. But we do have to be mindful. But we are the next generation, and we're the ones that these new guys are looking to. You know, there's a saying, "Look well to the east as you become a master of a lodge," and there's truth to that. And us past masters out there, that these guys that are walking in the doors now, becoming Masons, are looking to us as guides for their journey, and we have to make sure that we are available to them, and that they know that we're available to them, no matter what it is. At any given point, no matter what room I'm in, everyone in that room probably knows what I can do for them as far as guidance, right? If they have an administrative question, I can shoot them in the right direction. If they've got an esoteric direct question, I can shoot them in the right direction. If they've got, how to screw it up royally question, I can point them in the right direction. That's I am that guy that most people know that they can come to me and ask me just about anything. You guys are those guys too. And you got to make sure that people know that they can come to you. Because Daniel was right earlier when he mentioned that sometimes you've got those esoteric guys that are just not that public facing. They're not the guys that you want talking to the the public about Freemasonry or about anything, beyond what they excel at, right? They're not always, and that's the same way with the old esoteric hermits too. Sometimes they can be just as bad. They can, be so far down their rabbit hole that they just can't see past their blinders going down that hole, right? And so we have to make, because we are aware of our surroundings, and we're aware of the needs of our fraternity today. We have to make sure that we're available. And I think that should be the takeaway for tonight. Even though we started in one place saying that we shouldn't be spoon fed, I think our takeaway as members of this inner circle, and as productive members of our fraternity, of our brotherhood, I should say, not fraternity, um, even though that's technically what we are, I think that we're a brotherhood, and I think we were always meant to be that, and not uh, a washed down version of a fraternity. Um, we are that opportunity of light for our fraternity. We need to make sure and stay that way. We can't just go through the motions and be a reflection of the light. That's not our job. Our job is to be the light for others. And so with that final thought, I want to thank everyone for being so active on our in our chat and being such just great Masons looking for more out of your experience in your journey. I mean, that's and all of our non-Masons out there that are spending time with us that are just looking for a little bit more for their journey. Like I said earlier, all of this stuff translates into other areas of life as well. Like the Rotary Club being a great example. Or let's say you aspire to be on a school board one day, or city council, or any governing body, really. These are good things to understand and to have talked about in the past, so that when you come across these scenarios with different people, then you always have something in your tool bag that you can work with. That's why I think what we do is so important, because as we discussed earlier, to a small degree, our founders, they were the thinkers. They were the guys that were getting together, contemplating and discussing the problems of the day, looking for the solutions for the day. And they were doing it in private because they could have literally lost their head over it. That's why Freemasonry came about. So all you people out there that are non-Masons, that's all I'm hoping that we provide for you, is a little bit of clarity as you become the problem solvers of the day, the guiding light for other people in a positive way to help our human race become just a little bit better. With that being said, next week we will not have our live. We are going to do our Inner Circle book club, which we are currently reading Esoterica, and I believe we're on chapter 5. I'm going to say that, but we're going to do the chapter whatever we're on next week, so hopefully you paid attention. I believe that's what it is, though, because it's been 2 months. But even if you do not have the book, it's okay, because the things that we talk about are really philosophic in nature and esoteric in nature. It's not really, cut in stone on what you have to believe or whatever. So anyone can join in on the conversation. If you're an Inner Circle member, you have a right to be there. That's part of your membership. That's part of your journey. And I look forward to seeing you there next week. We'll do it at the same time that we normally do our live. But like I said, it's just going to be for the Inner Circle next week. That is a benefit for you to join. If you like us, if you really like us, subscribe. If you can't get enough of us, then you really ought to become an Inner Circle member, because it will be of benefit to you. With all that being said, I love you, brothers, and I love all you folks out there that